Back in 2008, I was living in Auburn, Alabama. I was 19 at the time, and one Friday night, my two friends and I were bored out of our minds. None of us had anything going on, so we got the genius idea to find something haunted to check out. This was before smartphones and GPS, so we used my laptop to Google haunted places nearby. I can't remember what site we found it on, or if it was even a real website, but we stumbled across a haunted house that was supposed to be about 45 minutes away. We figured it was one of those low-budget, homemade kind of places on someone's land. Sounded weird, but it was something to do. We printed the directions from MapQuest and headed out around 10 p.m. The first part of the drive was fine, just back roads and two-lane highways. But then we got deeper into the country. There weren't any streetlights, just stretches of empty road surrounded by trees. After a while, we turned onto a dirt road. This road cut straight through the woods, and it was pitch black. No houses, no cars, just trees and the sound of gravel crunching underneath our tires. We drove down that road for about 10 minutes before we finally saw it. An old, run-down house sitting at the edge of the dirt road. There was a hand-painted sign by the driveway that said, "Haunted House." No lights, no other cars, no people anywhere. Just us and this creepy house in the middle of nowhere. We pulled into the driveway and sat there for a second, looking at each other like, alright, this is messed up. The whole vibe was off. It wasn't like a haunted attraction with a parking lot and other people walking around. It was just this house that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Then, out of nowhere, the headlights of an old pickup truck snapped on, about 15 feet in front of us. The truck was parked facing us, blocking part of the driveway. The lights were blinding. We froze. The truck started moving toward us, slow at first. My friend in the driver's seat did not wait to find out what was going on. He threw the car in reverse and started backing out, but the truck sped up, closing the distance fast. We peeled out, kicking up dirt and gravel, and the truck followed us, right on our tail. I'm not exaggerating when I say it was almost bumping our rear bumper. The dirt road was narrow, with trees on both sides. There was nowhere to turn around, and the only option was to keep going. The truck's headlights stayed right on us, blinding us in the mirrors. Every time we tried to speed up, so did the truck. We were flipping out. It felt like something straight out of The Hills Have Eyes or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The dirt road felt like it went on forever. We were all yelling at my friend to go faster, but it was hard to see with the truck's lights so close. I kept turning around in my seat, expecting the truck to hit us or force us off the road. I still don't know how we didn't crash. Finally, we hit the main road. My friend gunned it, tires squealing as we turned onto the highway. The truck followed us for a few more minutes, staying right on us. Then, out of nowhere, it backed off. It slowed down, turned around, and disappeared into the darkness. We did not stop driving until we were back in Auburn. We didn't say much after that. We just sat there, trying to catch our breath. None of us had any idea who was driving that truck or what they wanted. To this day, I always wonder what would have happened if we'd gotten out of the car when we were sitting in that driveway. Whoever that was, they did not want us there. And I don't think it was just some random person messing around. I've never gone back to find out. I was a night shift truck driver for 15 years, and I've seen my fair share of weird shit, but this one still haunts me. It happened about 10 years ago at a Dunkin Donuts I was delivering to in the middle of nowhere. It was around 2:30 a.m. The only other building nearby was a gas station that was shut down for the night. I pulled around the back to park and noticed a woman sitting on the curb outside the front door. This immediately put me on edge. Nothing good ever comes from someone hanging around a closed business at that hour. Usually they're either high out of their mind or looking to rob someone. I grabbed my stun gun, just in case, and climbed out of the truck. The woman stood up and walked toward me. As she got closer, I saw her clothes were soaked in blood. Her denim shorts and the lower half of her t-shirt were practically drenched. She was jittery, pacing back and forth, and the first words out of her mouth were, "My boyfriend stabbed me in my vagina." She kept saying it over and over again, barely changing the phrasing. She sounded manic, like she was tweaking on something heavy. I pulled out my phone and called 911. As I explained what was happening, I tried to get her to sit down and wait for help. I told her EMTs were on the way. That's when her whole demeanor changed. She stopped pacing, locked eyes with me, and said, dead serious, "It ain't my blood, and it could be yours too." That's when every alarm bell in my head went off. I did not say a word. I just turned and got back into my truck, locked the doors, and kept my eyes on her through the windshield. She stood there for a few seconds, watching me. Then, without another word, she turned and took off into the field next to the lot. I kept my headlights on her as long as I could, watching her jog across the open field until she disappeared into the tree line. The police showed up before the ambulance did. I stayed in my truck, and they told me to remain inside while they searched the area. They combed the lot and the woods for over an hour, but did not find her. One of the officers came back to question me, and I gave them the full rundown. They didn't say much, just nodded and took notes. If it weren't for the blood on the curb where she'd been sitting, I doubt they would have believed me at all. I sat there in my truck until sunrise, waiting for the cops to wrap up their search. They never found her, and no one could tell me what the hell had happened. All I know is that blood wasn't hers, and if I hadn't gotten back into my truck when I did, maybe it would have been mine. I've replayed that night in my head more times than I can count. I've run through every possible scenario of who she was and what she was doing. My gut tells me I ran into someone dangerous, someone who'd just done something terrible and was already planning her next move. To this day, I have no doubt in my mind that I met the killer that night, and she's still out there. Last year, I bought a house out in North Carolina. It wasn't anything fancy, just a nice little place with a decent yard. far enough out to feel peaceful, but still close enough to town. After closing on it, I decided to throw a small party with some close friends to celebrate. It wasn't a rager or anything like that, just a laid-back evening with drinks, snacks, and some good conversation. The last guest left around 9:30 p.m., and after they were gone, I started tidying up. It had been a long day, and I was ready to crash soon. I was in the kitchen throwing some trash away when I heard it. This low grunt, or some kind of cough. At first I thought I was just hearing things, but then it happened again. For some context, I have motion-activated floodlights in the front yard. I noticed they were on through the kitchen window, which meant something, or someone, was out there. I froze for a second, thinking maybe one of my friends had forgotten something and had come back. But as I walked toward the front door, the lights suddenly shut off. I looked out the peephole, expecting to see nothing but darkness, which I did. I felt a little silly at that point, thinking it was probably just an animal, or maybe my imagination playing tricks on me. Still, something did not sit right with me. I decided to open the door and turn the lights back on, just to be sure. The second I opened the door, the floodlights lit up the front yard, and that's when I saw him. There was a man standing at the bottom of my porch steps. He was wearing this long, buttoned-up wool coat and a fedora. His face was shadowed, but I could see enough to know that I didn't recognize him at all. What really disturbed me wasn't just the fact that he was there. It was the realization that he'd been standing there in the dark, completely still, just waiting. He must have been there the whole time without triggering the lights until I opened the door. He coughed again, this dry, deliberate sound, and then he said, "You're not safe. You never have been." And then he said my name. My heart dropped into my stomach. I had no idea how this man knew my name. Every part of my brain was screaming at me to slam the door, but I couldn't move. My eyes locked onto his, and he just stared back, completely calm. I kept a shovel by the front door for yard work, and somehow I managed to grab it. I raised it and told him to leave now, or I'd use it on him. He didn't flinch. He just smiled, this cold, knowing smile, and said, "What I do to you is far worse than that." Then, without another word, he slowly backed away, step by step, until he was standing in the middle of the street. I kept my eyes on him the whole time, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. He never ran. He just turned and walked down the street, disappearing into the night. I called every single one of my friends from the party to ask if they knew who he was. No one did. I talked to a few neighbors the next day, but no one recognized him or had seen anyone matching his description. Well, almost no one. One neighbor a couple of houses down has a Ring camera, and when I told him what happened, he checked the footage. Sure enough, the guy showed up on the recording. He was caught walking past the house just a little after 10 p.m. and heading into the nearby woods. We never figured out who he was, why he was there, or how he knew my name. He hasn't shown up since, but I can't help but feel like it wasn't a random encounter. I still keep that shovel by the door, just in case.